10:30, so everyone's very prompt, which is excellent. Ready to warm up so we can start it on the dot at 10:30. So firstly, I'd just like to say welcome to everybody who's come today. We've had some fairly informal chats leading up to this one, but I thought that we really needed to start focusing the conversations a little bit more. And it was actually, good morning, Lisa. Yeah, can use your chat if you want. And it was actually Olivia Fyfe's post that prompted this particular Emma Dykes, our marketing manager, said, have you seen Olivia's post? It's really interesting. So I had a look, and then we sort of had a chat, and we thought, yes, it's probably good to maybe have this as a wider forum. So firstly, welcome to the challenges of online dance teaching. I'd also like to, on behalf of Ausdance ACT, acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and all First Nations elders, past, present and future. And from whatever land we're on, Ngunnawal, Ghana. And we've got a lovely panel of people today here as well who'll lead the conversation, but we want to keep it open as well too. So if people want to add, we've got other experts too, I'm sure, in dance teaching who've joined us this morning too. So if you've got comments or any questions that you'd like to add to the panel conversation, that'd be wonderful. But we'd like to thank Lisa Clark today for coming along, who's the director of Lisa Clark Dance Centre. We've got Kym Degenhart, director of Bomb Funk Dance Studio, and they're both active board members of Ausdance ACT. Olivia Fyfe, independent dancer and dance teacher at QL2, Lisa Clark Dance Centre and Radford Dance Academy. We've got Jacqui Simmonds, artistic director of Canberra Dance Theatre, CDT and Zest Dance for Wellbeing teacher, and Caroline Wall, artistic director of Fresh Funk. So welcome everybody. So some of the questions that I sort of put out there, I suppose, and I guess it's also asking everyone to go back to that first moment last year in COVID where you suddenly realised you had to pivot, which has become the new word, into sort of the digital domain. The last few weeks we're back in this space again, but I'd kind of quite like to you to recall what it was like under pressure to be able to transform what had pretty much up until then been a face-to-face delivery style of teaching, literally for decades. Lisa, do you want to start maybe?
For us last year, when COVID hit the first time and we went into lockdown, we pivoted very quickly. Within sort of 3 days, we were up and going. We used then a combination of Zoom classes and pre-recorded because we were very conscious of not overloading the kids' timetable with extra Zoom things, and we stuck to normal length lessons and all of that sort of thing. This time around, we took a little bit longer. When we went into lockdown on the Thursday, it wasn't till the Monday a week later that we started our Zoom classes. We again just gave everybody time to settle down again and see if it was going to be more than 1 week of lockdown. And then we've gone with a reduced timetable. We don't do classes of more than an hour because, for a start, there's not a lot you can do, that you can't do in an hour because of restrictions of space and all of that sort of thing. We're also doing a combination of technique in all our dance genres and concert work in the hope that we'll get to do something. Yeah, so that's sort of where we're at with it at the moment. And and this year also I'm using guest teachers quite a lot for my senior kids, just to keep them motivated and so they don't get sick of my face and my voice.
So yes, thanks for that recall. Well, you sound like you're very sort of on top of it, Lisa. Do you feel fairly confident, obviously, with this delivery style now?
Reasonably confident. It's wondering how long we can keep it going and how long the kids are going to keep coming back to it, because that's the hard part for them. Some of the kids are fabulous and just come to every lesson and are completely engaged, and then you get some that just are not there at all. But I'm sure everybody finds exactly the same thing.
Yes, and I think I'll bring Olivia in at that point too, because Olivia, as a teacher who doesn't have a dance school per se, but works across a number of different schools. Yeah, how's your experience been coming in at that end, as sort of a non-studio back? Because I think we've all had the thing where students don't always turn their screen on, which can be very disconcerting. Sorry, can I just ask everyone keep their microphone on mute if you're not talking at the moment, because otherwise we can hear background noise. Thank you. Olivia.
Yeah. Thanks, Cathy. I kind of started this conversation on Facebook with a post because most of the time I'm feeling pretty grateful to still have work, and I've been really well looked after by the places that I do teach for. So I feel very supported, but I'd had this just class where I was just teaching to black boxes, no videos. I'd ask questions, get zero response, and I just felt kind of at a loss, and that kids had poor reception and I wasn't able to sort of help them. And I think it is a really sort of tough time to sort of stay connected and still feel like you're actually doing the job that we normally do. But for me, it's been quite tricky because I don't just work for one place. I have 6 different sort of jobs, and normally I can get them all to work well together. But with online teaching, it just takes so much longer, like often 3 times the amount of time. And obviously you have to start creating completely new material that will work. Or if, say, for a lot of us that do concert material, maybe some of us choreograph on the spot in the lesson, and now we're having to pre-do it, pre-film ourselves, make sure you know right and left side because you'll have to flip the image from front to back. It's just a lot more effort. So I think I've only just felt like this week I've had a moment to breathe. I've been kind of like running on that adrenaline with just so much to do over the last few weeks. And I've kind of lost that adrenaline now and getting used to it.
Yeah, well, I think the first time I had to teach on Zoom, and it wasn't dance, it was university tutorials, how exhausting it was. That was the first thing. It's like riding a bicycle or driving a car for the first time. Is it going to work? Am I going to have an accident? Is it all going to crash? But also, there is a limit, I think, to students' ability to be able to absorb information, or anyone to be able to communicate through this form. And partially because you're only working in this frame. So the intensity is really, increased, but also then spatially, I think being able to, redefine space and how that works with a specific camera setup as well too. With anyone else, Kym, what's your sort of setup in the studio like? That's always, I suppose, if you've got the backup of a big institution, often tech can work, but that also presumes you can be in the institution accessing their technology. But often we're having to teach at the moment, from our own space. And what's this meant in terms of technological limitations and teaching?
Yeah, so we've struggled in that a little bit, in the sense that our studio in Jerrabomberra, we have pockets of poor internet in our kind of zones, and the studio is in one of them. So we've actually, even though we were allowed to in New South Wales go into the studio to do our Zoom classes, a lot of us have resorted to be doing them from our houses because we have better internet in our own homes than at the studio, which is really frustrating. Yeah, so I think it's very dependent on what each teacher has access to, and as a studio owner, that's quite stressful because you want to be able to support them so that they can have their best classes, but how do I make their internet better? So yeah, it's those kind of struggles of what technology can we get to assist everyone. Like I've just purchased a widescreen camera so that I can fit more in to the screen, and that's helped us a lot. Some of my teachers have decked out their garages with, full mirrors across one side and all of that to help with those kind of setups. So I've just been working with each teacher individually on what their space is and how we can make it work. And most of them now are working from home rather than studio because it just wasn't feasible for us, and it just kept dropping out. So, yeah.
Did you find, it was interesting, you mentioned someone had set up mirrors and, the way, and was that just trial and error, or were people actually going into webinars and finding out information from other teachers about how they were doing it? You know, is it sort of individual trial and error, or do you find there's a bit of an online community that's emerging?
I think, I think it was a bit of trial and error, or just what worked for the spaces that they had. Obviously, you know, as soon as you get a mirror involved, you can increase what everyone can see. So yeah, things like that just helps everyone's different spaces. So, and as soon as, you know, one teacher would find that in our faculty, another teacher would be like, oh, that works really well when I watched you take that class, because a lot of our teachers take each other's classes. So they were like, oh, that worked really well for you, so I might try that and set that up. So yeah, a bit of trial and error, I suppose, and seeing what other people are doing and what it works.
Yeah, I think that's, I think trial and error is definitely, but I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because we're all used to a certain amount of performance when it comes to teaching. You know, there's an element of control with teaching as there in with performance. And I think when we walk into that space, we like to know that everything's going to work, you know, the music's going to work. And so I think I've certainly experienced it in my very limited capacity, just having to teach one class the other week in this space as a bit of a test for myself, just how terrifying it is, because there are so many things you suddenly realise that you're sort of, you can't control. And as you said, internet might fall out. We had sort of sound issues with copyright. And in fact, I was going to speak to also whether different genres and music use has been a bit of an issue too around copyright. Lena, you're there somewhere, aren't you? Hello, Lena?
Hello, how are you?
Hello, yeah, well, thank you. Because my personal preference for ballet class is to do sort of use hip hop and house music and so forth. And we had a problem where the copyright issue suddenly on Facebook. We decided to go guerrilla, it was my idea, rather than use Zoom as a platform. Well, I just thought we'd get more people, you know, a bit more accessible. But Facebook has very strict things around copyright and music. How's that been in the Zoom environment for other genres outside of, you know, ballet music tends to be, if you do traditional ballet music, you know, it doesn't tend to kind of come across those problems. But what about using music which is more contemporary? Has that been an issue?
Look, I'm going to be honest off the bat and say we actually haven't employed a lot of Zoom or online. Like we've started doing one online class a week, but other than that, we've mostly used the pre-recorded tutorial format, and only in a minimal sense as well, partly because it does give us more control over those things. We do pay some copyright through the Tuggeranong Arts Centre, so they kind of, you know, usually guide me on that. But yeah, I mean, just to avoid that altogether, really, we haven't done as much as some other schools are offering in terms of like continuous Zoom contact. And, you know, so yeah, it hasn't been a major issue, the music part for us. Ours is more the, I think the energy. I think for like obviously we're quite a commercial form of hip hop, our studio. But it's really the power that lies within a group and like getting excited watching the people around you is what's so impossible to recreate in an online environment. So we've kind of more taken the attitude of like just trying to remind them how much they enjoy dance, using social media a lot, you know, putting up little flashback videos of projects that we've done or things that we've enjoyed. And yeah, kind of just keeping the connection that way has more been our strategy.
Yeah, that's right. Because I just sort of, I hadn't sort of, you know, I sort of thought, well, yeah, different genres will deal with this in different ways. And, you know, ballet, one sort of end, you've got ballet, which has got a structure around it, which in some ways you can sort of certainly cut down and adapt that structure. As someone was saying earlier, it's you can't do as much as you can in an hour, so it has to be sort of reduced. But I mean, yeah, hip hop, as you said, it's all very much premised on, or anything, you know, that's sort of club culture based originally on people coming together. And so it's just really defined what people coming together in a certain space, you know, means. And Rachel, we've just had, So, and I've just got to, Rachel, do you want to talk through Rachel Reid? From Jazida has just popped something into the chat. Right? Hello.
Hello.
Just talk through.
I actually kind of transitioned onto teaching classes online before COVID hit because it was a project I was going to do anyway. And also I've been running live events. So like I've been producing shows online for a long time now. And so there are a few things that I do consistently. Because also it's the same with promo. Like if you make a promo video, they'll also catch you for music. So there are 4 things I do. The first thing I do is I pay for the APRA fee so that I'm like covered digitally. And as soon as I pay that fee, then suddenly Instagram notifies me. They're like, we've unblocked all of these videos. So they're like, I don't know how they're doing it, but there's obviously some sort of, they know who you are and where you've posted things. So I pay for the APRA fee. The other thing I do is I use my own platform. So I don't stream on Facebook, and I don't stream on Vimeo, and I don't stream on YouTube because they all have the bots that catch you for music. So I use my own platform, which is called Video Streaming Provider, which sounds like a fake name, but it's a real thing. And that way I can post anything and none of it's moderated. I also use remixes. So I go into YouTube and I'll search for like copyright free music, and people will do like mashups, like hits of 2020, and they'll like only use 29 seconds of each track, but they'll remix it in such a way so it doesn't breach any copyright law, but it sounds like banging tracks that everybody recognizes. So you get that same like quality of like, familiarity, but without breaking any laws. And the other thing I do if I'm really lazy, which is probably what I do the most, is I'll find the song that I like, and either I will do it, usually I'll do it on my phone through an app, or I'll edit the songs. But I've just got an app that's like music speed changer. So instead of playing my music through Spotify, I play it through this other app. And in that app, I have all the music to be played very slightly faster and very slightly pitched. So I'll like put it 1 semitone up or 2 semitones up, and then I'll like make it like 90 or like 105% of the original speed. So because the track is both faster and at a different pitch, the robots can't pick it up.
Well, there's one for ingenuity. So yeah, well done on dodging the, and of course a lot of the obviously hip hop and dance music culture actually came from dodging around the rules in the first place as well too. So it used to be 6 seconds you could sample, I think originally. You were allowed to before the whole copyright issue came up. Anyway, that's a whole other issue. Jacqui, thank you. Thanks, Rachel, for talking us through those options too, because you do have to be able to, but it's almost, it really is a full-time job almost. You have to have somebody just sort of looking into your music options, I think, if you teach. Jacqui too, Jacqui Simmonds. Hello, Jacqui, where are you?
I'm here. Hello.
Hello, Jacqui. Hello. Hello, welcome. So of course you've got a dance centre that has a number of different genres that you're teaching, and you pivoted pretty quickly onto online. Is that last year? You obviously started doing that, so it wasn't so much of a shock this year?
Well, last year we did it for gold initially. That's our company of dancers, 55 years and over, because we were very concerned that their 2 classes a week is such an important part of their weekly schedule. So we wanted to maintain that community as best we could. And some of them just took to it so easily. Others had to get grandkids in to help them with the technology, but over a few weeks they managed to make it happen. Others, as someone said earlier, just haven't got involved in on screen, and that's absolutely fine. So we were in here rehearsing on that Thursday, and the word went round that we were going to go into lockdown, and they just made the assumption, okay, well, we'll see you back on Zoom on Monday. And we did that, and Philip's actually in the studio at the moment teaching class. So I think over the course of the year, particularly for older people, because I teach mostly older people, Zoom has become more familiar with people. So our Dance for Wellbeing classes last year, we worked through Belconnen Arts Centre, and we were doing pre-recorded classes. And I don't think there was a huge uptake in those, but we're doing the Zest classes now live. And I think people just enjoy having something in their calendar that they can go to at 11 o'clock on Friday morning. They like meeting each other at the beginning when you see everybody else on the screen. And I think for older people, there's a sense of, well, if this is what we've got to do in order to stay connected, then we'll put up with not enjoying the technology, but to do the best we can in that environment. And it's interesting, we've had some messages from some of the Zest people that when they can't get on, they really miss the class. So I think for them, it's really that sense of, here's something in my week, so I'm going to get on with it and do it as best I can.
How have you found with have you found there's more people coming into the classes now because I wondered whether access had actually increased because of the online option now around the dance for wellbeing classes in particular?
Yes, it has. We've been getting the word out there, and people have been obviously sharing the links with each other. And so every class we get a few more people. We go, oh, I wonder who you are and where you heard about it. So yeah, the numbers are actually pretty good.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, really. Sort of to go back to the anyone else on the panel or anyone else who'd like to ask, have you found that the uptake has actually increased numbers in some ways, or has there been more of a drop-off? Lisa, did you find initially all your classes were quite happy, pretty much came over to online, or was there a bit of a drop-off with younger students?
There was a drop-off on the really little kids, the 3 and 4 year olds, and mostly because it was too much of a hassle for parents than anything. And then so what we did with our little classes was they were all pretty much pre-recorded, so the kids could do them like following along with play school or and do it like that. But in our classes from kids about 8 or 9 up, I think we lost 2 kids last year. And same thing this year. We haven't lost any at this point, but who knows, depending on how long it goes on for.
Well, yeah, that's right. And other guy, Kym, and Lena as well, did you find that was the case, that it was a pretty even transition, or the little ones not so engaged?
No, we've had a terrible uptake last year in particular. We lost, I can't remember the numbers now, but it was something like 75% of our studio. So we didn't get that engagement. We did a lot of pre-recorded last year. So this year we've gone to more Zooms, and that has helped with retention. So this year's been a lot better. But I think for us, it has something to do with the time that it happened. So last year lockdown was quite early in the year, so we hadn't started projects. Whereas this year, our comp teams all have their routines ready for comps, and we're preparing for comps. Our end of year showcase, we've all started routines, so everyone's engaged in their routines that are hopefully going to get performed. So there's something for them to work towards. And last year we didn't have that because it was so early on, and we last year didn't sit exams. So one of the biggest changes that we brought in this year was our students now sit exams, so that we had something for the kids to work towards at the start of the year as well. So yeah, that was a big learning curve for us, because I was watching a lot of studios that had exams and their attention was remaining because everyone had a goal. And I think that's the main thing. If the kids don't have a goal and a reason to connect online, we just weren't seeing that. And I think part of that is because, like what Lena said, a lot of our kids are very recreational, funky, hip hop, it's all about the community coming together. And if they don't feel that, then they don't come. It's only our really elite kids that then kind of go, yes, well, the real passionate ones, they're always there. But yeah, the rest kind of dropped off. So that's been our experience from last year to this year. It's been very different.
Yeah, look, our retention rate has been quite good last year and this year. We learned a few lessons along the way. I think I definitely learned that the less expectation I had, the more likely people were to kind of hang in there. And I know that probably sounds a bit weird, but I think for us, a difficulty or a challenge, let's put it that way, is the fact that we have the majority of our program is teens into 18 into early 20s, even in just our advanced classes or our senior classes. We're mostly talking about people 16 and up, and those young adults. So the more expectation there is that after a full day of school or a full day of work that they then have to get on again and do a Zoom class, the more difficulty we experience in getting them to continue. So that was why we ended up doing just a few pre-recorded things here or there. And then this year, just sprinkling a few Zoom classes in there, doing a little bit of the pre-recorded, but pulling back on what was expected. Similar to you, Kym, having that goal is a huge factor for us. So we had started a really exciting production, and everyone really loved their first pieces when we went into lockdown. So, we're just hoping against hope that we can do something, whether it's filming a project at the end of the year or something. But at the moment, kind of dangling that and just asking them to keep going is working. But again, it's because they don't, I think in our case, they don't feel the pressure that they have to log on and do their Zoom class at the end of a already long day, because I think that would be a bit of a turn off for our particular age group.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's that issue, I suppose, between what's emerging, that the pre-recorded class versus the online Zoom as well too, and I guess gauging where your particular students are going to sort of respond to better. I would have thought curriculum is easier to teach through pre-record.
So for us, I think, yeah, like, I don't know, we have a principle with our pieces where we try not to have everybody do exactly the same version of something. Like when we're working on a show, it's more like you guys come here and we do this, and then we, and so that's very difficult to teach on Zoom. It's probably is easier to do, but like on a pre-recorded tutorial, but either way we can deliver the chunks that they do the same, and then the rest is kind of waiting to get back in. But yeah, I think, yeah, it very much depends on your genre, I think, overall, and your age group. Just, I don't know, the drive to want to get on and see everybody. I think a lot of adults, it's like, I don't want to see anybody else, at the end of the day, it's like, I'm done, and yeah, so that's the challenge, I think.
Yeah, and if you're teaching a syllabus, Zoom's easier because, well, it's just not so labor intensive for you as a teacher because the work's already choreographed and the music's there, so you can just go in and teach your syllabus class, and it's good for the kids because it's familiar. They're able to keep just working on the things that they have. But in our case this year, we were very lucky and we got to film our 6 days of exams in the week before lockdown. So we have now moved past that, which is making it interesting and challenging.
Yeah. Jacqui, because you have a number of different teachers who work, with under the CDT umbrella, have there been very varied experiences across those different teachers? I mean, you have your contemporary, I know you have your K-pop. Are they all offering online, or have some of them chosen not to? And what are I know that they can go into the studio to access that now, which has been great. That was really happy that the government allowed teachers to be able to go to their studios, although Kym had the problem of being cross-border, so that didn't really help her.
Well, this year, we do have much more on offer by Zoom than we had last year, because last year there was so much that was available around the world for ballet and other styles that we just thought, why bother competing? But this year I said to a couple of ballet teachers, do they want to teach something? And they said yes. And I said, well, let's try it and see what kind of numbers we get. And it seems that people are really, well, the people that we work with are really keen to maintain some sense of community. So we've got, I think, 4 ballet classes a week. We've got our CD tribe, which is our young people with additional needs. Their parents seem to really enjoy it, and the kids enjoy seeing each other on screen. And so that becomes a highlight of their weekend activity. K-pop's the one that's not so good in terms of numbers, but having said that, we had 13 yesterday, so that's pretty good. And contemporary, that's the one that I hadn't been doing much with, but we had a workshop on Sunday and we got a good number for that. So I'm thinking that depending on how long the lockdown goes on for, that I'll just offer a whole range of different things every weekend or every couple of weekends. But I'm just trying to keep my sense of who's around and what they want. And if things are working, great, stick with them. And if they're not, well, we'll try something else.
Olivia, so how have you found teaching different styles generally? Like, what's from an actual physical point of view, how are you finding moving between different styles? So, for example, contemporary versus...
I find contemporary to work quite well. I mean, it's such a open genre, and I think we lend improvisation lends it quite well to both pre-recorded and like live classes. So I've been using quite a lot of imagery and improvisation sort of practices, which I think is really great for the kids because they can just dance how feels good in their space, or also trying to encourage them to not just dance in their house spaces, and that they can put on a song and go somewhere in a park in their exercise hour and dance. Just because I think this can be quite a restrictive place. They've got parents watching them as they're dancing now. And so trying to get them to have moments where they can just break out and dance how they enjoy, I've really tried to focus on. But yeah, I still teach ballet and other platforms. I think for me, concert work is probably the hardest to feel creative in this space. But I enjoy teaching class work more.
Unmuted. Yeah, the containment is an issue, really. It's and of course ballet is very much, you know, the bars come into its own, but of course centre work is really, you know, not much going on there apart from a bit of port de bras.
And contemporary, we can't do floor work and traveling sequences, or, you know, that's why I think I've probably gone more to simple technical things and improvisation, because I can't roll around. That takes up way too much space when you're lying horizontally along the floor. Not enough room for that, and not really safe.
No. Well, safety is a bit of a thing, really. I mean, it's kind of redefined safe dance practice. Has anyone come up with sort of a list of things that, you know, spatial things to advise people about? Because, you know, floor surfaces are a bit of an issue too, and just, you know, making sure too that if you're going to do something big, you don't take your foot out while you're doing it.
We sent out last year, you know, a set of guidelines to make sure that everybody you know knew what they had to do and had as much space as possible. And, you know, and we got target off cuts and handed them out to the kids. And, you know, and this year it's interesting to see that a lot of them do have much better spaces. However, you still get the child that's trying to do ballet between, you know, using her chest of drawers in a bedroom and has a metre between that and her bed. And that's the space that she has to dance. And you can only see them from the knees down. So that, you know, they're all the challenging things, trying to work with kids, and, you know, in particularly in a classical base, to maintain their technique and things, and trying not to let terrible habits slip in, because, you know, I found last year when we got back into the studio, you know, all their posture had changed because they had spent all the time looking down at a camera. So that changes. So you've got to try and, you know, encourage them to get the camera up and work like that. And it's very hard in a class setting when, you know, you might have a class with this many kids in it, and you're trying to make sure that you do all the things you would normally do in a class and make sure everybody gets feedback. When you know, as I said, sometimes you can only see them from the knees down. You know, I'm doing, all my staff are doing quite a lot of private lessons, and they're much better. You can do a lot of work like that in a private lesson. So
yeah, I was wondering about that, whether this has been a bit of an upsurge in private classes, because there's no doubt a smaller group work better than a group of 30, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. And you know, from a technique point of view, you're working with them on one-on-one is really good. And, you know, and working in a big group, you know, I'm sure we've all had to find new ways, because, you know, you can't do hands-on corrections. So you have to employ, you know, as Olivia was saying, you know, much more imagery, and also trying to teach even the youngest kids to take more responsibility for themselves, because they have to be able to self-correct. So it's finding ways to do those sorts of things that are a challenge, but are probably one of the good things, I suppose, that come out of this, is that the kids do become a little bit more independent about how they learn and how they self-correct. And also, because you can't hands-on correct, they have to find new pathways and muscle memory things, and you have to talk to them. I talk much more about feeling how, you know, getting into the right position and how does it feel, and now you have to remember that and find the cues to continually help them retain and to some degree improve.
Would anyone else like to reflect on that, you know, in terms of the actual specificness of correction and the relationship that this new platform's created?
I was just going to mention a little tip for people who might not know with the cameras. If you're struggling with just seeing a part of the student's body, something that we've encouraged our students to do is on Zoom, in the video settings, you can actually get your webcam to flip to a vertical, so you can see their whole foot to head, and it's just like, it's a skinnier view, so they can't travel as much. But something like a ballet bar is perfect for that vertical view. So it's just, you just literally go into your camera settings on Zoom, and you can flip, it's like a little arrow, and you can just flip the camera. And that's worked wonderfully so that you can see foot to head. So yeah, if you're not doing that, highly recommend. There's tons of little YouTube things. I think I've put one on my studio page as well. So yeah, it's really helpful.
And is that, so that's not using the camera, so you actually you have to have a webcam for that, or this is operating off your normal camera within your computer? Because I'm assuming that most people who move into the space would get a webcam, but you know.
No, you can just use whatever you're using through your Zoom. So your built-in computer camera, yeah, it just recognizes it and flips the setting. So you don't have to physically move anything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good tip, because it's suddenly it's a lot, I think, for people to suddenly have to become sort of effectively videographers and cameramen or camera people, you know, overnight. That's been the challenge, you know. I would have thought, for, you know, being able to grapple with the technology and then translate it to how it's going to work, you know, for dance, and to have a positive experience with. Did anyone do any Zoom training around this? Or it was literally trial and error? People seem
a bit of Googling.
Right, okay. How did you find, and parents in this too? I mean, a lot of you teach younger children who have parents, and you know, what's been the relationship with parents in this space? Have they been supportive? Do they get impatient because they think you've got all the answers? You know, because there's that thing about, oh, the teacher is sort of in control and should know how to do all of this. Have they been quite forgiving, you know, when it doesn't quite go right, or how's that been?
I'll go. Yeah, parents have been generally really good. You know, at the beginning we would get texts and emails, and you know, I can't get on, and all of that sort of thing. But mostly it was because they weren't reading the instructions properly and weren't looking at. You know, we have our Zoom set up with 6 different studios, so the kids are going into the same spaces all the time. So you know, on our normal timetable, each age group is color coded, so they were going off that color code rather than the Zoom color code, and things like that. So that took a little bit of getting used to. But once they're very forgiving, and, you know, they just go, oh, well, we couldn't get on today, or our internet dropped out. See you next time. There's no real issues like that. The biggest issue with parents is the ones that actually stand there and try and correct the child as you're trying to teach.
I wondered about that, because suddenly you're in their domain, and you can't sort of shut the door and, you know, tell them to come back in an hour. So they do pop up.
They do. Yeah, they do. And, you know, on a light note, it's always fun when you know, you're teaching a class of kids and up comes a little hand and says, please, Miss Clark, can I go to the bathroom now? You know, they're in their own home and they're still asking to go to the loo.
Speaking as from 2 perspectives here, I must say, as a parent, and just it's nice hearing from Lisa, because I've got Kaya doing classes at the moment. We're actually quite grateful as parents, I think, for when the little ones do, you know, have that scheduled Zoom class to get onto. And I think it's a good distraction, but it's also like a little bit of continuing that discipline. So I think that's really nice. And then from the other perspective, for our little kiddies, we have been continuing weekly on Zoom. And yeah, the parents just seem to enjoy, like, often they're doing the dancing with them, which in our case is okay. It's a little bit different. But, you know, and sometimes the little brother or sister is there as well. So it's almost like a nice little family moment where they get to connect and bop around and do something. And yeah, so I think, I think parents generally have been quite appreciative.
Yeah, oh, that's good. Well, yes, I mean, particularly when things are so limited, doing something that isn't schoolwork, I think people should be, you know, quite welcome for you know, things for their children to be occupied with in this space that aren't just sort of, you know, static schoolwork. We've just got I'm just having a look. There's a lot of people contributing into the chat, so I'm just having a look down there at the moment. Grace mentioned that they've definitely had a drop off with adults. The longer lockdown goes on, because people have kids around and spend all day on Zoom for work. Yeah, it's my students, adults, Rachel was saying, dislike Zoom because it's too glitchy. and they like the meeting together and working towards a thing with deadlines, but they prefer pre-recorded. Yeah, I did find it difficult, and it's just personally because I did some classes. I did some of Jacqui's ballet classes just to get a sense of what that was like, and it was sort of, I think the lockdown thing, you're grateful for whatever you can get, and I think too for me, I'm always rushing to get somewhere, and so actually just being able to rush to my computer was actually a huge gift. I didn't have to get in the car. I didn't have to, find my ballet. If I lost my ballet, I could 1 minute before, I could be looking in my cupboard for them. So for someone who likes the idea of teleportation, I'm still waiting for, so I can just land. This is a step towards that. So, Olivia, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I think I teach at 3 places, and we are offering a mixture of pre-recorded and live classes, because I feel like for a lot of kids, they don't suit to just one or the other. And so having a mixture of them is actually really, really healthy. I know like at QL2, we have really short pre-recorded classes and then a nice Zoom catch up, which is definitely more about checking in and connecting and being a bit more social. And I think that works really well, having both on option. And some kids, will do one or the other, and some will do both. But I think then they're all catered for really well. And I know that for like Lisa Clark and Radford, where I teach, we do live classes, but then we upload our choreography pre-recorded so that they can catch up. And I think it covers everyone then.
Yes, it's sort of the great thing about it is it allows for sort of inclusivity in a way that, going to a class in a specific place or locale sort of didn't before that. I've got a couple of questions too. We've got Ros and Grace. So Ros, do you want to go first and then Grace?
Yeah, sure. And I just want to identify, I'm not a dance teacher, I'm a dance physio, and teach 15 classes of yoga online and meditation currently. And I just want to reflect to you all, and I over the 30 plus years, I've seen numerous of your dancers, whether they're injured or to prevent injury. And the great majority of the individuals that I see, they're nous around embodiment and accountability at a young age. I don't see in any other elite movement that I work with. So I've worked with sort of 6, 7 international sports, but dancers take it on younger. As a physio, we can give exercises so much earlier and have a buy-in so much earlier. And I just wanted to say that you only know the community you know, and to reflect back to you that the way that you're communicating them with so many modalities is it shows through. So I'd like to support that, to have some faith in what you're doing. And all athletic populations I'm working with get deconditioned during this period, no matter how well attended, but there will be an amount of them that definitely get deconditioned. And so managing expectations, I'm sure you learned that the first round. The time you come back, we learned that in the yoga studio. We had to completely peel back what it was, the nature of the classes, the intensity, the heat for some of our classes, pull that back. The other thing I would reflect is heat, and I'm sure you've all accommodated that. I know some of you have colder studios than others, some from what the students tell me. And they're not just dealing with the space at home, hey, but they're dealing with, you're trying to get them appropriately warm for what they're doing and engaged. And some of them might have a 12 square metre space and another 2 metres. And I think the whole diversity, inclusivity, accessibility and equitability is something I really encourage you to continue to embrace. Like continuing to show up for your students is then giving them the opportunity to show up, and they'll work within the capacities they are. But you've got a great population, the great majority that I see. So up to you.
Thanks very much, Ros. Yeah, I think there's no doubt that the dance profession tends to be a secure, generally, we know the bad stories, but a secure environment with always a very sort of ethical compass around safe dance practice as well. And that's certainly something that Ausdance has sort of, championed and I think, created almost the sort of the safe dance guidelines too with that. And yes, I think the pathway, particularly with Pilates and, really was through ballet. I think that's how I first knew about it, as a form of rehabilitation for dancers prior to its New York iteration and now more widely accessible. So dance has always been on that frontier of rehabilitation, I found. And yes, it's getting kind of redefined in this space. Grace, would you like to?
Yeah, I just wanted to jump back to just some of the comments around pre-record and maybe ask Olivia and potentially Rachel as well about like what platforms you're using for pre-recording, because I guess that's like one of the things I've found is like a barrier is not really knowing where I can upload things and share them that it's sort of cost effective without, you know, ending up with the fact that I'm already losing money in lockdown and then having to spend heaps of money into a different platform. So just if you have any tips around those.
Well, for me, I'm not a studio owner or director, so I don't get that choice of where they're going to be uploaded. So I'm finding I'm doing 3 different types at the moment. I'm doing Vimeo, Mobitay, and OneDrive, and they all take very, very long times to upload and all have their sort of issues. So I'm probably not the best person to sort of talk to about this.
Would someone like to?
I can tell you about my experience. I do a lot of my pre-recording stuff and put it onto Dropbox, or I put it onto just like an external hard drive that I have at home. Where I'm streaming stuff, like I said, I have my own streaming provider, so that is a paid service. But where I don't want to use that, or prior to using that, what I used to do was upload all of my pre-recorded videos onto YouTube and make them unlisted so that no one could see it unless they had the link. Or I'd make it private so that straight up no one could see it. And then what I would do is build a new page within my website, and I'd call it like Advanced Fan Dancer or whatever that particular group of people was. And I'd embed all of those videos from YouTube into my website, and then I would use a authenticator on my website so that I would say, hey, this is the link. And when they click on the link, it asks them for a username and password. And then I would give each of the students their own unique username and password so that they could watch all of the videos that I just uploaded through YouTube privately. Or similarly, I can embed the videos that I own streaming provider, or use the videos that I've got on my Dropbox and just put the links within a web page that's that's got a password protection. That's the way that I do it. But the other thing that you can do is, I've been talking a lot in the chat about this system called OBS, which is an open source. It's what my live stream team use when we actually stream events, like when we stream Fair Day and when we stream like other like major like events that are happening. And so OBS is kind of like a back-end studio system. Usually you set up scenes, so you have different cameras and you do live switching between the scenes. So you'll switch between a main camera to a side camera to a something camera. But you can also use OBS to set different kinds of scenes, and your scenes could be a pre-recorded video. So often what I will do is I'll be live in the Zoom chat, but my Zoom, instead of being a camera on the computer, will be a virtual camera through OBS. So they'll still see my face as if they were looking at a webcam, but then in OBS, I can then change what they see. So they'll see my face like this, and then I'll say, okay, so now let's watch the video, and then it'll change from my face to the video. And within OBS, I can also do things like watch the pre-recorded video and have my face small, being like, okay, so you see how we're doing that there? That's what I want you to do. So within OBS, I'm delivering all of that pre-recorded content live on Zoom, like I'm actually there in person. And in that case, I'm just hosting those videos on my own computer. So that's where I can just use an external hard drive or just use the desktop of my computer to store the files without having to pay for anything extra. I hope that helps.
Grace, can I jump in as well? So we've had a bit of a game changer this year with a new app. I mean, it's not a new app, but it's new for us. We've joined up to Band, which is a free group app. And we've created a class for every single class that our students are enrolled in through Band. And our teachers communicate with their classes in there. So there's live stream options, so the teacher can go live. There's group chat options, and you can change, there's like kid safety versions. So it's, there's lots of little settings that you can play with so that you can get people, like stop people from messaging you and all that kind of stuff as well. But it has the video upload function, so we can upload videos in there. So all of our class routines, after they have their live Zoom, we're then putting the pre-record video in their classroom so that they can all just go into their classroom and view it at any time. They post questions. It's kind of like a Facebook group. It looks like a Facebook group, but it's got all the functionality to do like live Zoom calls, not Zoom, sorry, live calls, video uploads, photo uploads. Like I just put a blast out reminding everyone, if you're in charge of all the Zooms, you can send a blast to all of them, so you're not having to redo it every single time. So I just said, hey guys, reminder, this week's pajama week. So it's kind of like another way to get information out to your families who might not be reading their emails all the time and all that kind of stuff, but then each classroom is individually getting their content through the videos as well. And it's all free. So that's been a major game changer for us. We've got kids connecting through there. If they can't get on the Zoom, they're still able to, you know, keep up with their classes that way this time around. So yeah, hopefully that helps too.
It's like everyone's had to become online producers. It's quite astonishing, actually, because there's a huge amount of knowledge there and, you know, skill base to get to the point where you can actually do this. I'd certainly like to open it up in the last sort of 10 minutes to anyone else who's got questions. But I mean, it presumes a team, unless you actually know how to and have the time to do all of this. Have you been outsourcing to people to provide the support for these setups, or, and, you know, has it all been on, you know, on your own?
It's been within, you know, within my teachers and stuff. My daughter is my administrator, and she's just a whiz, and she looks after all of that side of it, and that's fantastic. So, yeah, but we don't outsource.
Anyone else? Have you found that you've had to bring other people in to help, or to film, or to?
It's the arts. There's not much money for that.
No, a friendly person, neighbour, boyfriend, girlfriend. No, well, that's actually one of the, I did actually ask the government for that this time around. I said, I think we need some digital packages, and you know, for people, because, I mean, even if it's sort of retrospective, I mean, the outlay for everybody in terms of labour and resources, I thought has sort of been remarkable. Everyone's just done it, but you know, flexible support for digital packages, I thought would be something. No one got back to me, but I'll ask again. Because it is a huge amount of, I mean, to me, it's also indicative of the dance community, who are always so resourceful and often at the frontier of everything. My belief is that dance is always the first of the art forms to respond to what's going on. And to me, this pivot has been the fact that we're even using the term pivot. I wonder if anyone is using it outside of the dance world, but it seems to me that the dance community are the first worldwide to pivot within seconds and to take on the challenges. And so it's indicative of the resilience, I believe, of the dance community. Do we feel, I'm just seeing if anyone's got their hand up. Jump in if I don't, because I've got to, I've actually got you on, I'll put you on a different view so I can see you all. Has anyone got any other questions too? How many of you think that you'll actually continue, anyone else, but also the panel, with the online after lockdown? Is this just a temporary measure, or is this something that's going to be actually part of your delivery moving forward? Got quite a few people nodding. No, Jacqui?
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, we will continue using Band as a bit of a backup for all of our classes now. So like our teachers often would record content in classes and be like, you know, and then they'd Air Share or Apple Share or whatever it is. I don't have Apple devices clearly, with the kids, so that they'd all get the videos to go home and practice. So we're now going to use that as a way for classes to continue to communicate. So yeah, but Zoom, I'll get off that as quickly as we can.
Right, not popular. Olivia and Caroline, and I think Jacqui too, go through the panel.
I think this time and doing everything online really makes it clear why we do things in person and why we teach the way we normally teach. And I think we're all doing an incredible job transitioning and trying to create this space still for all of our students. But there is a reason why we dance live and in person, to connect properly. And I think as soon as we can move off this, I'm ready to say goodbye to online teaching until we need to come back to it. Yeah.
Yeah, look, we've always had a bit of a rule that, except in a few key circumstances, we don't allow the students to film at the end of classes. Like, we try to really say, I mean, I definitely grew up without being able to record. Like that's what learning is in the environment. You know, you want to take it away and work on it and try to memorize it. And I don't know, like I think kids are so reliant on their phones and like wanting to record things that it becomes, I'm going to sound like such an old fuddy-duddy, but it becomes a little bit of like lazy learning sometimes. So then, you know, that's then one of the difficulties when you have to jump online and rely on videos. So no, we'll definitely be going back to kind of that format, as soon as we can, because it just is a different level of engagement in the moment. And I think that's really important, if particularly for dancers who might want to go into audition environments and whatever. You don't have that time to walk away with the video. You need to get it then and there, or at least try. So yeah, I'm not a fan, but you just got to use it while it's there.
Yeah, thank you. And Jacqui, your reflections on
it's more about yoga than dance, is that I have had more people in my yoga classes on Zoom because they can just roll out of bed and get onto their mat. They can have their pajamas on still. So I think they like that. And some people, after last time, I had a couple of women who were so consistent on Zoom, but they never came back to the studio. They just decided that that's how they wanted to practice. And the other thing is it has an international or a beyond your barriers, your boundaries kind of option. So we do get people. Last time we were offering gold classes on Zoom, we had people from Japan and people from other places in the world to come and join us. So yeah, I agree entirely that I want to get rid of Zoom as soon as possible, but it does have one or two useful advantages.
Yeah, I think the access issue, I suppose it's all that, the upside and downside of the internet generally, but I mean, it has allowed access to people who mightn't have been able to connect with dance in ways and across countries before. So, you know, I think that's something to be, and I think particularly for older people as well too, who are bound by their house. I think and disability as well, the potential there to engage in dance practice, you know, is fantastic. We just got some, Chip, did you have Chip had a question. Chip to everyone, what's everyone's plans for EOY shows? Grace has said they've postponed, you postponed the concert, but you set a cut-off date for when it becomes unviable. Lisa's saying holding out for more information from the government, but have several options depending on circumstances. And Caroline, Elena was saying, Chip, we're still hoping to film, even if it's one class at a time or whatever. Did anyone want to talk about their end of year shows and what it looks like? We've moved our Youth Dance Festival to November. We're just hoping to film it, singular, individual schools, but it all depends on the restrictions.
Yeah, I think we've got a backup plan for nearly every situation booked now. And because we're across the border, we're kind of dealing with New South Wales versus ACT as well, which is super fun. Don't advise it. But we are also looking from I just saw some of the things that people have written down. Another one that we're looking at is an outdoor event again. So we had a plan in place last year to do an outdoor event until it became unviable. So we're hoping this year with the whole vaccination push that perhaps outdoor events might be something with a larger audience capacity perhaps. So yeah, we're looking at like showgrounds, and we're even looking at a drive-in option where people can stay in their cars and the kids are on the stage. So yeah, there's heaps of different directions we can take, and hopefully tomorrow when they announce the ACT roadmap, we can all get a bit more of an idea of what might be possible. Yeah. Yes,
fingers crossed. It's this week, isn't it? So I think we'll all know where we are, you know, later this week. Well, look, it's coming up to the 12 o'clock mark. So does anyone else like to leave any parting comments? We've recorded this session, and I also want to record the chat too, because there's really good sort of tips there as well. So we'll make sure it's posted for people who couldn't, because there's some really good advice here, I think too, particularly about tech. So yes, there was one thing I was going to say before we leave too around tech. We talked about music briefly. So the recording. or just quality or internet dropout? Oh, well, just I think it was one of those things that came up early on about the problem is that in terms of accessibility, people's access to internet, I think, is one of the biggest problems in terms of online teaching. And, you know, you might have a great whiz-bang setup, but then the kids that you're teaching over there, in fact, one person's unstable internet can bring the whole class crashing down, which is quite sort of terrifying in that regard too. So until there's sort of, you know, NBN is sort of not an equal playing field, and that, you know, really does sort of compromise, as we said, you know, bodily exchange and the glitching and music. Oh, that was the other thing about music, the lag. Oh, I found that really difficult. Like I tried to do a ballet class and the music would start, but then the teacher, it was a different time and it completely threw me. So I just stood there the whole way through Tonju because I just felt flummoxed until I just kind of went, I'm just going to have to just do the exercise and forget about the music, which is very difficult for me. But I'm mainly teaching tap at the moment on Zoom, Cathy. So just take a second to feel for those tap teachers. Oh my goodness.
I love Tuesdays. I end up with a headache every Tuesday now because it's my tap Tuesday.
We had a fun Zoom thing over the weekend, nothing to do with dance. It was my mum's 80th birthday and we had a Zoom party and there were about 40 people all singing happy birthday at different times. It was just hysterical.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably a great note to finish it on. And I think too, let's pity the choir people and singing, because they've actually been hit really badly as well too. And I think singing online is, you know, they try and do it, but I think, you know, a choir in this environment is something of a cacophony rather than a choir. All right. Well, on that note, thank you very much for joining. We'll make sure that this is posted as a resource. It's been lovely to see you all and everyone turning up for coffee. So yeah, and it's like hopefully we'll be free by the end of the week, next week. Hooray! So stay in there. Thanks, everyone.